It is March 10th, 2025. Level Up College Football Podcast back in the building. Man, we done took a hiatus, but we crocking out now over here on the Know It Alls channel on the video side. Sitting with one of my co-hosts, Andy P, man. Sarah couldn't make it, had some stuff going on, but trust and believe for the season, she will be back. But, man, it has been a minute. Andy, what's crack-a-lacking? What's going on, bro? And I'm ready to talk college football. What's happening with you, man?
It's been nice to take a little bit of time off, get recharged, following up on some other sports that are going on in the world. But it's been, we didn't get the busy week by week, but little pieces of news trickled out. We had an interesting transfer portal, an interesting spring developments. Things are still happening on campus, so I'm excited to dive into it with you and get back into that routine.
Facts. What's up? What's up, Afton? What's up, Tim? We done had a couple of people jump back in right now. And he said Andy decided to come back after doing some soul searching with G. Nah, bro. The issue was we was always there. But listen, after we win a national championship and after all that happens and all that's going on in professional football, because you guys got to remember, Andy's a diehard Syracuse fan. I'm a diehard Buckeye fan. Sarah's just a flat-out football fan. And we had to take a break, because we got a lot of stuff going on all our ends. But now, like Andy said, it's time to get back in motion. He said, Juice Bellamy said, wrong show, G, but today's not a good day for the Steelers. Yeah, I'm not talking about – I'll crash out if I start talking about the Steelers, bro. I'll crash out, so I'm leaving it alone. So I'm here to talk about college football, the Buckeyes, and everywhere else. But listen, before we talk about it, we got to make sure that people know they can find the audio podcast over on Fans First Sports Network, and wherever you get your audio podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and or Google, you can check it out. But on the Know It All side, we're over here on the live video. And we got a bunch of folks jumping in. Juice, Tate Boy Fresh, Tim Lyons, Afton. We appreciate y'all rocking with us, man. So, Andy, let's kick this bad baby off, dog, and do what we always do concerning college football, man. The Know It Alls podcast, absolutely. If you haven't, they're here. You subscribe, but you can share it with whoever. All right, Andy, it's the springtime, bro. The lovely, lovely springtime. Everybody loves the spring. But do they really love the spring, bro? We have had spring football games canceled across the board. It's not just one particular team, one particular conference. And people are talking about showcases, 7-on-7. Bro, why are they doing this? And what does this mean to college football moving forward, and your thoughts and your thinking? What is it going to do, bro?
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that the spring game is something because of the way the calendar works with college sports. The spring game was essentially, look, at the end of spring ball, which is the time during the offseason where coaches are allowed to interact with players, spring game's kind of the culmination of that. So you had this built-in 8-week window where you say, guys, you have 8 weeks to prep for this game. That's how we're going to structure these practices. That's how we're going to structure everything that we do. It's all leading up to this game. And since then, we've just gotten so much more sophisticated around college sports, where it's not like these guys are getting back into the gym for the first time around spring. I know what the rules say, but that's why you get these senior captains around here, and the senior captains are the ones kind of running things while, at the coaches are back channeling them information, and it's all a little bit ridiculous. And again, it goes back to these old outdated NCAA rules that are meant to protect the student athletes from being overextended, that we've just way blown past at this point. So for the last 20 years or so, you've seen spring games start to change where the coaches don't need that game to evaluate players. They're consistently evaluating guys throughout the year. But then you throw in the NIL stuff, you throw in the everything else that's been going down with the way that rosters are being constructed, and you've got two camps here. You've got the Matt Rule camp of, I'm scared that the spring game is going to be a showcase for my players to get poached in the next transfer window. And then you've got the other side of it, which is more the Syracuse, the Fran Brown side, which is, I don't really need a game to evaluate these guys. I'd rather showcase these position battles that I care more about. Right now, I want to highlight my quarterbacks. I want to highlight my defensive backs. I want to see how these guys do in a more targeted environment. And so I think that that's really, these two things are all kind of coming to a head where it just makes more sense now. If you're a school, do something on campus. Like, I think, and you could talk more about it at some of these bigger schools, Big G, but like, these are massive for a lot of schools. These are massive events that engage hundreds of thousands of fans.
Facts.
And you don't want to lose that part of it. But how can you rework that into something else? Like, you see, maybe like it's a fan fest, or maybe it's something that's a little bit more low stakes, but you're still getting that people in, because it is really important for a school. You want to have a touch point with these people. Now that there's going to be so much going in and out of the door on the coaching side of the ball, on the player side of the ball, you want to make sure that your fans know who they're going to be rooting for come the fall, that they stay engaged throughout the summer when things typically go quiet. Spring game is still really important for that level of fan engagement. And I think that's the biggest challenge for coaches and athletic staffs right now is, okay, if we cancel the game, we're losing an opportunity to get in front of hundreds of thousands of fans. How can we make sure that we don't lose that part of it while still making sure that we're keeping our coaches happy with doing something that's a little bit less structured as a game?
Yeah. Andy, I agree with all of those points, but man, I just got a saying, man, either you live in your faith or you live in your fear. And I think a lot of these coaches, man, are living in their fear versus living in their faith. They're worried about guys getting poached, guys going to other programs, putting it out there on wax and on film that people are like, look, man, we got a position for this guy if he's going to be buried on the depth chart, right? And I know at the bigger schools, that's what's going on. That's why they're canceling it. Now, it's feast or famine with it as well, Andy, because the revenue lost and the potential revenue that's lost for this is huge. Not just the fact that they can get 100,000 people crammed into a stadium, but like you said, moving forward, whose jersey are we going to like? Who's the starting quarterback? Who's the starting running back? Who's the guy that we're going to get behind that's going to help us generate revenue? Because it's not always about the quarterbacks. It's about the guys that you can showcase to draw recruits to your school to be able to bring guys in for the next generation of people, right? So now a lot of people don't know this. In the springtime, that works as a window as well to bring in recruits from junior college, to bring in recruits for the following year. You get a close hands up front area where a coach can pay just as much attention to you and what's going on at the field. So they're killing themselves with those opportunities. Now, what it was going to create, in my opinion, Andy, and I want to get your thoughts on this. I think now you're going to see skill positions transfer like ain't no tomorrow. Because you're going to see these 7-on-7 showcases. It's basically freaking flag football, right? So you're going to see the 7-on-7 showcases. You're going to get this, that, and this. And you're going to see a kid just blow up in the spring, but he's going to be buried on the depth chart, and somebody's going to go to call it. Because you know tampering is a real thing, bro, whether people realize it or not. It's open season all day, every day, and there's still another portal window that's coming up, bro. And I just want to see what you're thinking about those thoughts, man.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because that second spring window, coach, it's kind of like when we moved up the national signing day and have the early signing day and then regular signing day. The second window is not where coaches want to be building their roster. That's kind of like the pull lever in case of emergency situation. Like what you got going on right now with the Steelers and their quarterback situation in free agency. Like, you don't want to be dipping into that window unless you absolutely have to. But if you are dipping into that window, there are still talented guys available who lost out in a spring battle, or their favorite coordinator got swiped. Like, we've seen a lot of coordinator and position coach movement that's been taking place over the last few months after the first window closed. And so you're just in this position where there's still going to be valuable players around. And again, like you're saying, some coaches are living in their fears and deciding that they just want to try to minimize that risk. But if a guy knows that he's got a chance to move upward, or he knows he's got a chance to go back with his guy, they're going to take it. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And so if you're a smart school right now, what you're doing is you're consistently monitoring these situations. You've got like a little chart going of saying, these are all the coaches that move. These are all the guys that we know are worth keeping an eye on. Let's figure out, if there's something there when the second window opens and we don't like what we saw in the spring.
Yeah, and listen, I running through the jungle, B-Dirt, man, that is a great comment. Michigan is still playing theirs, and you're absolutely correct, bro, because they don't live in their fears. They're living in with their faith that, listen, we got a squad. Listen, we came off of a down season after winning a national championship at 7-5, and we've reloaded with a quarterback that might get one of those transfer portal wide receiver skill guys if he goes and blows up in the spring game. They've invested like $10 million in Bryce Underwood. He's a 5-star number 1 quarterback off the board. So I would absolutely showcase the kid, because now, like I said, guys are looking, they'll be like, wait a minute, they're going to be throwing the ball all over the yard. This ain't the traditional Michigan that we know. I'm going to go play in Michigan. And so I think it's to their advantage. Coaches living in the fears, and I'm going to call out some schools. University of Texas, The Ohio State University. They're living, University of Nebraska. They're living in their fears because they're worried they're going to get poached. And that's not, to me, it's not going to be beneficial for you, especially in the upcoming. Now, there could be some changes concerning schedules, rules, reducing from 2 transfer portals, 1 right after and then 1 in the spring, to where it goes down to 1. But right now, you're putting yourself in position to hurt your class of the 2026 versus help your class of the 2026. And do you agree, bro?
Yeah, I think that right now you just got to consistently be playing the long game here. Like, I know the portal makes everybody say, oh, we can fix things right now. We can fix things quick. But what we're seeing right now is that the coaches that are doing a great job with portaling, a great job with roster management, they are thinking 2-3 years out. They're identifying guys who if they buy, they bring them in young and they develop them in-house. If they lose guys, they have guys that they're okay losing over time. It's just, I think, really reactionary right now from the schools that might not have as a sophisticated front office setup as some of these other teams do, that you're seeing these decisions being made.
Facts. All right, man, listen, we're going to take a quick pause. We'll be right back. If you're watching us live on YouTube, just give us a second. We're going to pause on the audio side, pay some bills, get a word from our sponsors. Wherever you're listening to us, Apple, Spotify, and or Google, this is the Level Up College Football Podcast. Me and my boy, Andy P. We'll see you in a second. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Andy P and Big G in the building, missing our co-host Sarah C. But trust and believe, as we run this thing and we ramp it up through the spring, get it going to the summer, you're going to see plenty of Sarah C FaceTime on camera, man, because all 3 of us have a passion and a love. And we appreciate all you guys rocking with us on the Know-It-Alls channel. If you have not subscribed, share with a friend to let them know that the Know-It-Alls channel is moving forward with more production and more shows. We've added this now to the Gambit. We've added a Mash the Gas on Wednesday nights. We got That's Rather Cavalier. We are growing our network, working diligently to get to 1K subs. So we appreciate all you guys rocking out. And we know that there's a lot of college football fans that's in the chat. Andy, what's cracking with you? What's going on, bro?
You know, just still trying to adjust to the time change that took place here, but otherwise we are enjoying some nice warm weather, enjoying some sunshine here. And yeah, I see in the chat here we got Tim Lyons here talking about 8 days till first pitch. I'm a big baseball guy. I'm starting to do all my baseball fantasy draft prep. I've got all those drafts coming up, and so I gotta start getting the spreadsheets together. That's my goal for this week. I gotta get all my massive baseball spreadsheets together here for my multiple fantasy drafts I got. And then we got March Madness next week. I'm hyped. I don't know about you, Big G, but I'm ready for the NCAA tournament. I'm going to the Big East tournament on Wednesday, so it's going to be busy times here in New York. How about you?
Yeah.
What are you up to these days?
Man, it's football wall to wall. I'm going to say balls to the wall. I'm going to get no DD, no doubt. But that's what we do all day, every day over here. But I'm excited for March Madness. Now, and my Phillies are going to be big trash this year. So I already know I ain't too hyped about baseball. But, Andy, I know that both of those sports that we talk about outside of here is fixes just to get us through the time until it starts back up for college football, man. So listen, we talked about the subject about who does the spring game not being played hurt the most. I just want to say, I think it hurts the big schools. That if I had to pick one school, I would say probably the University of Texas or the Ohio State University. Andy, what's your thoughts, man? Which way or which school does it hurt the most?
Honestly, I'm going to call out another one of these schools that we talked about living in their fears. I think it's really going to end up hurting Nebraska the most here. Like, this is a
Yeah.
school that obviously came into this past season with a lot of momentum. That is still a school that, even though it hasn't had the on-field success that a lot of other big schools have had, they still get the 100,000 to show up every game. They still have that diehard support that you would expect out of a big school. And their challenge is clearly raising the NIL funds necessary in order to compete with some of the bigger schools in their conference. And doing things like eliminating the spring game just kind of shows that maybe they're not as big as the rest of these big schools are. And that's not what you want to be doing when you're trying to like level up your program right here. You want to act big and roll with the punches rather than act small and then try to make that jump into being big after you've lost all this support and lost this infrastructure. To me, I just think that Nebraska is really handling this poorly. But I think a lot of this is because Matt Rule is somebody who has been an excellent coach in the old way of college football. And now that college football is changing, we just talked about college basketball. A lot of college coaches who are masters at the coaching craft in college basketball quit because of the NIL era and the transfer portal era. They just didn't want to play that game anymore.
Yeah.
I think I have eyes on Matt Rule as the next guy that might just like out of the blue say, you know what, I'm done. I'm going back to the NFL to be an analyst or some cushy job over there because he's just tired of dealing with all this stuff because he's not handling it well. Completely honestly, he's handling this very poorly.
Yeah, the guy that I had my target on, Andy, all last year was freaking Dabo Swinney. I was like, he's not adjusting. He's out of here. But we done seen Dabo change up. And guess what else Dabo's done? He done leveled up the program and embraced the spring ball and embraced the spring game. So he ain't scared. So like I said, living in your fears or living in your faith. And I think the big-time programs is what it hurts the most. All right, bro, we're going to segue. Listen, this was massive. I wish we could have had a show when it dropped. And so we're going to educate people concerning what just happened and what we think is going to happen concerning the NCAA, how we actually see conference play, and what's going to happen. Because I think, Andy, we've been calling it already for a whole year. The ACC's cooked. Well, I think this was like them actually building a fire and starting to turn the freaking the roaster, dog. They're marinating these suckers because I think it's over. But before I jump in on my stuff, bro, your thoughts about the settlement, educate the people on what's going on with the dang on money and how this is going to look moving forward for the ACC.
Yeah, I think for the highlights that you need to have here is that for the last year and change, the Florida State and Clemson have been trying to sue the ACC because the ACC, when it made its deal with ESPN a long time ago, created this very simple yet very restrictive television agreement that essentially said the ACC owns all of your television rights basically in perpetuity. And that grant of rights basically runs through the mid-2030s. Yeah, and facts. What it meant is that if you are a Clemson or an FSU and you want to buy out of the conference, not only do you have to pay the exit fee that's negotiated with the conference, but you'd also then have to buy your rights fees back because otherwise the ACC would own all of your television rights fees, which is the whole reason that these schools move to other conferences. And if most people estimated that right now, if Florida State or Clemson were to leave the conference, it would cost them close to about $1 billion in cash on hand to buy out their deals. Something that, as much money as we talk about, there is no higher ed institution in America that will burn $1 billion to buy you out of a conference. That's just not going to happen. A few $100 million maybe, but billion absolutely not. So what essentially happened a couple of weeks ago was that the ACC, Clemson, and Florida State reached a settlement where this case is not going to be going to court. The legality of the grant of rights is not going to be challenged, which is very important. But more important for Florida State and Clemson, they got two major concessions. The first major concession is that the ACC is going to move into they had moved to a performance-based model for revenue sharing, which meant that based off of how you performed in football and in basketball, you would get larger payouts. Florida State and Clemson didn't like that because Florida State and Clemson started getting competition in football and started missing out on those guaranteed paydays. Yes, so sir. Now the ACC is moving into a hybrid payout model where competition is part of it, but the other part of it is going to be eyes that games and the teams bring to games. So if Syracuse is playing North Carolina, even if that's number 1 and number 2 in the ACC, but Florida State versus Wake Forest gets more eyeballs on the game because it's Florida State and they have a bigger fan base, Florida State will get a larger share of revenue because more people watch their games throughout the year, which is ultimately what they wanted. So that's a big blow to the smaller teams in the ACC that could have potentially gotten bigger payouts based off of actually winning on the field, even if they have a smaller fan base. And then the second part, which is why I think both you and I are in agreement that the ACC is probably done within the decade, is that both all schools in the conference were basically given a reduced penalty to leave the conference by the year 2030. So it's going to de-escalate from now until 2030. But in 2030, it essentially becomes incredibly financially possible for a school to pay their buyout, leave the ACC with their television rights intact. And the reason that this is so dangerous right now is that if you are the ACC, you have essentially said, we are now on a 5-year let's prove that the ACC is going to be a viable conference, because you know that in 5 years, Florida State, Clemson, UNC, NC State, and Duke are all actively looking to leave this conference and get into either the Big Ten or the SEC. Now, if you're the Big Ten or the SEC, you've also got 5 years to say, I don't know if we really want them, or can we get other schools that might, be cheaper than these two ACC schools that still bring us what they bring. Everybody's on a 5-year timer right now. But if you're the ACC and you're a school like, say, Syracuse or like SMU that just paid all this money to be in the ACC, you're kind of left here being like, what the hell, guys? Like, this conference just acquiesced to 2 schools that nobody was in agreement with and has basically signed away the future of this conference because of those 2 schools. And so I think right now you're dealing with a very divided ACC. There's a lot of proposals right now talking about how they can potentially win different factions back, how they can get this larger base of support that they need. But ultimately, right now, if I am a school in the ACC, I am spending every last dollar I can on football to get myself an invite to the Big Ten or the SEC by the year 2030, because that is essentially what the conference has said is going to happen anyway.
Andy, bro, I'm telling you, we didn't even talk about this in pre-production. The last thing you said was literally the segue where I was going. Because based on the de-escalated scales concerning the dollar amount, bro, I'm saying by 2026, 2027, I think it's a wrap. Because you're going to look at, say, for example, we run the college football playoff next year, right? We know that as of right now, we're sitting at 12. 2026, they're going to jump to 16. And I think they might even try to push it for next year. If you mess around and get like a Florida State or a Clemson or one of those ACC teams get hot and get in that freaking tournament and you got eyeballs on them, guess what's happening? The clock's running and they're generating revenue. So versus spending and investing in a program, what I think you're going to do is see them start stashing money, right? And by them stashing money now, that goes down, and then you go to a conference like the Big Ten or go to a conference like the SEC and say, look, we can pay 60%. Can you pay 40? We can pay 70%. Can you pay 30? So I'm in firm belief that we're going to have a buyout entry, maybe not by the end of next season, but definitely going into the next year. I believe we're going to see it because how much the money starts falling off a cliff. We talked about it. By 2030, it's going to be like $26 million. That's nothing to get out of a freaking contract. So, I'm thinking, look, man, maybe next year, not next year, but maybe the year after, the ACC has a fork stuck in it. And I believe that the SEC and the Big Ten is going to actually start looking at who they want to align themselves with. I'm a firm believer in that there's no way in hell the SEC is going to let Clemson walk away because there's a natural rivalry with South Carolina. I'm a firm believer in hell that Florida, the SEC is not going to let Florida State walk away because there's a natural rival with Florida State. But all the rest of those teams is wide open, bro. And like you said, Who's going to put the eyeballs? Who's going to hit it big as far as a program? Because really, we're talking about freaking football. Basketball is all well and well, but I'm talking about the football. Who's going to hit the home run to put them in position to say, look, bro, we went out. And I think that's where the Big Ten is really looking at. The Big Ten's like, okay, who's the next dog to step up in the ACC and get it popping so then that way we can bring them over into the conference, man. I just want to see what you think about that, man, because I mean, that's where I've been thinking really like all day when I thought about this subject matter.
Yeah, and the ACC is making a big bet that with the new revenue structure that they've agreed to, and with the expanded playoff, meaning that conferences will theoretically get more for what they there's more payouts going back to the conferences, that because of all this, Florida State and Clemson will essentially sit back and say, we're not going to leave the ACC because we have a guaranteed payday in the ACC versus the non-guaranteed payday in the Big Ten and the SEC, because the competition is going to jump up so much that we're just never going to be guaranteed those top tier payouts. We're never going to be guaranteed the playoff spots like we are in the ACC. That's the ACC's bet right now. I think that's a stupid bet, but that is the bet that they're making right now. And so if you're a school like, and I think one of the interesting things, Tim has it in the chat, NBC renewed their contract with Notre Dame until 2029. And I think that is incredibly intentional there, because if you're the ACC, Notre Dame is your white whale to save all of this. The Notre Dame ACC deal got extended as part of this. As part of this deal, Notre Dame is now guaranteed more games against the premier side of the ACC. So you're going to see Notre Dame play Syracuse less and Miami more. Going to see them play Wake Forest less and play Clemson more. So as part of this deal, the ACC is essentially trying to keep Notre Dame on that hook. So that way, if Clemson or Florida State decide to start saying, hey, we want to go, they can potentially pull Notre Dame into this conversation and pull in Notre Dame's television revenue into the conference. But again, you and I have talked about this before. Yeah. I think that if the Big Ten was smart, the Big Ten should be hammering to bring Notre Dame into the Big Ten, because by doing that, you essentially kill the ACC's lifeline. You're then guaranteed to get some of these ACC schools in on the cheap, where they'll give up part of the revenue sharing just to get out of the conference. And you still have the opportunity that if you're the Big Ten, and I think this is something to watch out for, if you are a school like Rutgers or Maryland that is underperforming and has not delivered certain television markets or certain eyeballs to the conference, you could be replaced by the ACC schools. I could 100% see a world where the Big Ten kicks out Maryland and adds Virginia Tech, kicks out Rutgers and adds Syracuse, especially if these schools that have football tradition going back to the Big East and natural rivalries with the eastern half of the Big Ten, if they get everything together and they get their collectives together, that is also on the table here as well. And so I just think that, again, I'm with you. I think the ACC is done, but I think that Notre Dame is like that first domino to fall with everything, because the ACC and the Big Ten are both looking at Notre Dame going, we really want you here. But Notre Dame is up here saying, like, we make so much money as an independent that makes the playoff every year. Why would we give that up? You have to come to us with a Godfather offer, or we lose Marcus Freeman and this program craters off, and then maybe we reconsider. But at least right now, it seems like Marcus Freeman has made a commitment with his contract extension, which, again, that's something that happened since we left. Marcus Freeman got that bag in Notre Dame, and I think his buyout's now something close to like $60 million. Like, I just don't ridiculous. I don't see any program paying that for a head coach when you now have to have so much more around your apparatus. Like that's right now, I think Notre Dame has Marcus Freeman on lockdown for at least the next 3 or 4 years. Yeah,
totally agree, bro. And I'm digging the targets. I'm digging the freaking Syracuse, Vatech. I think they go diligently after Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and maybe Clemson, the Big Ten. But I know that Notre Dame, and like B-Dirt said, they don't want that smoke. Notre Dame traditionally, I mean, we talk about them. We're going to shift gears in a second. But traditionally, Notre Dame always scheduled like Michigan State. They were scared to death to play Ohio State because they knew they was going to break shoes beat off of them. But because every time they play them, Ohio State smashes them. But those other teams, the Purdue's, they were scheduling. Now all of a sudden they out there and they ain't doing the same thing that they always did. But if Notre Dame's smart, because how this thing's going to work, you better get in where you fit in, or you're going to be cooked. And that's how it's going to go moving forward. All right, bro, we're going to switch to our next topic on our next subject. Will the real position you stand up? Because listen now, it's a lot of chatter, and I think a lot of people is going to like this segue because this is a multiple part series that we're going to talk about over the next several weeks, right? The real position used. This is in-depth study by me and Andy, looking at who really plays for what, where, because you got all these schools talking about I'm wide receiver you, I'm DB you, I'm O-line you, I'm quarterback you, I'm this, that, and this. Nah, we're going to compare apples to apples and look, because we're not just looking at our census based on who put guys in the pros and what they did in the pros. What did they do while they were there at that school? And then if they blew up like crazy, then what do they do moving forward going to the NFL? So we're going to give this a real deep dive. And like I said, I think this is going to be a good thing that people are going to really watch to inform them for concerning history, who's what, when, and how. All right. So, Andy, we're going to do our first one. I think we're going to do maybe one or two today. I don't think we're going to do all three. But we're going to start with running back university. Who is the real running back university? Will they please stand up? Who you got, bro?
Right now, I'm sitting looking at Texas. Like I think that if you look at what they have done over the last couple of seasons, especially since Sark has gone there, and that's kind of the way I'm evaluating this, is like, what is the infrastructure that you have in place right now? Who is at the helm of your program? What are they consistently targeting right now? And I really do think that Texas has done a fantastic job under Sark. I know that the quarterback gets all the laudits down there, but they have just done such an excellent job attacking the running back depth that was there. We saw that this year, back half of the season, lose their number one bell cow. That's fine. We got another one in there. Oh, and by the way, we're grabbing, some of the best running back recruits in the country and getting them to come down here. We know how good Bijan is at the NFL level. We see these workhorses that they're getting. And my credit to Texas, and the reason why I'll give it to them over some of these other schools, is that they are recruiting these guys out of high school and keeping them in the program, because they are telling these guys, look, you do not want the miles on you as a freshman. We will do this in a way that preserves your career for when you need to be peaking. And then you can go to the NFL with fresh legs, because that's what everybody cares about these days, is we got to make sure that you don't have too many miles on you. Because if you have too many miles on you and you're a workhorse, you have to be Ashton Genty level dominant. And so for me, again, like I just looking at the way that Texas has handled the running back position, the way that it has allowed them to protect quarterbacks like Quinn Ewers, like Arch Manning, who clearly have some holes in their game. I just love what Sark is doing down in Texas with the running back position.
Yeah, listen, when I looked at the in-depth at how many guys have jumped to the pros and at what they've stacked concerning position rooms moving forward for the 2025 season, there's no ifs, ands about it. For the 2025 season, running back is the University of Texas, and they're loaded. I mean, they're getting C.J. Baxter back, who last year you wouldn't have known who Blue and all those other guys were, right? So, and they have like 3, 4, 5 guys stacked on top of each other who are all going to be first or second round draft picks concerning moving forward with the Texas Longhorn program. So the U right now is Texas. Now, I will say this. The transition for Ohio State is going to be different. Can Bo Jackson and people step up like Quinshawn and Travion? I think if they do, they're right there with them. The transition is also for the University of Michigan. University of Michigan lost Edwards and Mullings, but when I'm telling you they got those 2 kids out of Alabama and what they recruited, and that Matthews kid for them is unfreaking believable. Thanks, shout out to my boy B Dirt. I got to see that boy in person. I was like, holy crap, he's a freshman? So yeah, there's going to be some teams that's biting at their heels for the RBU moving forward for the 2025 college football season. All right, y'all, before we get to wide receiver U, we're going to pause for the cause, take another quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with the Level Up College Football Podcast, chilling with my boy Andy P on the Know It Alls channel. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Me and my boy Andy P in the building, chilling on the Know It Alls channel on the audio side, Fans First Sports Network, rocking out, doing what we do, talking college ball 24/7. What's crack-a-lacking, Andy? What's going on with you, bro?
You know, I'm glad to be back here talking college football, talking about some of the best schools, talking about all the things that we missed in the offseason. You know, it just feels good to get back into this game and talking about our favorite sport.
Man, does it ever, man. I almost feel like, man, I'm missing something. And I think I done found my love again with the passion I've had for college football, man. All right, man. So, Andy, on the backside of the break, wide receiver you, dog. I mean, there's a lot of chatter out there. People talking crazy. I mean, I done heard everything you can think of, and I think it's a clear cut. Ain't nothing to even talk about what we saying and why is this, that, and this. But I'm going to start with you first, bro. Wide receiver you moving forward for this season, man.
I mean, it's tough. It's tough for me to do to look at any other school besides from Louisiana State University, LSU Tigers, man. Like you look at just how every single year they are churning out NFL Rookie of the Years. They're churning out some of the best wide receivers, and they're guys that are not even on your radar to begin the season. And then all of a sudden they just go through an offseason, they go through some spring ball, they have a massive season, get drafted somewhere in the teens in the first round, and then the next thing you know, they're ripping up your favorite team on Sundays. Like they are just, at this point now, it's going all the way back to the Joe Burrow years. They have just, and it's funny because they used to be DBU. And then I guess what happened is that all these DBs got annoyed of being cooked in practice so long, so everything switched over to the wideouts over there. But I think I know who you're going to go with, but I wanted to go with a little bit of a zag here. I think that the LSU Tigers have continually shown it. I do think that Brian Kelly is doing his best to do absolutely nothing with those guys and ruin that tradition that they've got going on there. I am not. I understand that this ranking is tenuous at best as long as Brian Kelly is there. But we'll do our coaching hot seats eventually. I think that man is my low-key favorite this year to get fired because, man, people are getting tired of him down there. He's about to ruin one of the best tradition classes when it comes to wide receivers down there. I like LSU as wide receiver U. I think they've got the history. They've got the recent history. They've got the talent. They just don't have the coach to utilize it properly.
Man, listen, something told me you was going to do this, bro. And I understood. So I understood it, right? But, man, it's no question, dog. I mean, it's no question. We can go all the way back to Christopher Carter, man. Joey Galloway, Terry Glenn. I mean, I can go all the way back on you like that. I can run Teddy Ginn, Santonio Holmes, man, at the second or third generation of guys you want to talk about. And, oh, God, the run that we've had the last 5 years at Ohio State concerning wide receiver, maybe even 6. Terry McLaurin, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith-Njoku, now Emeka Buka, and oh my God, the monster himself, Jeremiah Smith, bro. The wide receiver U is Ohio State University. And listen, I just want to throw something out there. Do you know right now, based on projections, Ohio State has 2 of the top 4 wide receivers in the country next year, including number one. Number one. And we're talking about Tate and Jeremiah Smith, so I'm listen, and don't get me wrong. I'm not throwing other programs up underneath the bus because I'm telling you something. There's a fight out there right now for that Chris Henry kid. Chris Henry that Oregon is trying to go get him. Michigan's trying to go get him. So this thing could shift. But if Brian Kelly and them is really who we think they are, this is the tail of the tape. And I think this is going to switch our segue. They better have some wide receivers this year. Because they're losing their number one dog to the league. He's probably, based on his character issues and all whatever else, he's probably going to go in the 3rd or the 4th round. But in any other year, if his character issues would have been right, 1st round pick. So, I'm going to be biased. I'm going to call bias on myself, Andy. I'm going Buckeyes wide receiver U. You're going LSU. And I'm going to be interested to see what Sarah says, too, because Sarah sometimes goes into big bias, and talks that crazy mess concerning college football as well. So, we're going to segue, all right? Because we was going to do quarterback U, but we're going to save quarterback U for next week, along with tight end U, all right? Today, we're going to talk about, because Andy, I'm just so excited about this topic. I don't know where to start. The depth of the SEC quarterbacks. And is the SEC conference the best conference we've ever seen in college football history concerning quarterbacks that can play at the next freaking level? Bro, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know if is it just all hype based on what they have in depth. And I mean, we'll run down some of the guys they have and what they're looking at. But the SEC is unreal, bro. It's unreal to me, like what they've got stacked up at quarterback, man, position. So your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I think we've seen the last few years, and I think that this year the national title game was another great example of this, where you had both teams following the same formula that we have seen arise as how you can be a high floor and a high ceiling team. You need to have an elite defense. And that's the hardest part of the job. You need to have 11 guys on defense where you are an elite unit, because at the end of the day, if you only have, a good stopping the run, teams are going to pass all over on you. If you can only stop the pass, teams are going to run all over you. So at the end of the day, you need to have an elite top 10 defense in order to compete and try to win national titles. On the offensive side of the ball, you need to have a quarterback who doesn't lose you games. I know both Riley Leonard and Will Howard at multiple times this season were given flack for not doing enough to help their team win games, but there was not a single game that you can point to with either one of those guys where they were the definitive reason that their team lost a game. And I think you've seen that going back, with the Nick Saban Alabama dynasty. Sometimes those quarterbacks had to go out and win a game, but they never really lost any games for you. And they always all had really high floors. And then you saw Kirby doing that with Georgia, and Stetson freaking Bennett was
national champion. Stetson Bennett,
right? And look, that's no shade to Stetson Bennett, but there were better quarterbacks all around him. And you've seen schools that go after that high-end quarterback play from recruiting. They're just not able to put together everything they need in order to allow that quarterback to succeed at the highest level. So now with the transfer portal, with the ability for teams to go out and pay players through NIL and this new direct compensation that's taking place next year, if you are a school that has money, aka all the schools in the SEC, you now have the ability to go out there and say, look, building a defense is hard. We're going to focus our recruiting efforts on building that defense and filling in the gaps where we need to with the portal. But we are going to go out and we are going to get that number one quarterback, or that high floor, don't lose me game quarterback, because that's what you need to be in the conversation no matter what. And I think the SEC has done a fantastic job of identifying that's the most important position on the roster. We need to go out and make sure that we have that. Otherwise, we just can't compete in this conference. And so you look at Texas, they kept an Arch Manning who they recruited in, but then you look at a lot of these other schools have gone out and they've bought that guy and brought them in-house. And it's just top to bottom, the entire conference has adopted that ethos and is moving forward with that game plan.
Man, Andy, listen, you're absolutely correct. And the depth is, listen, I get excited about college football when I start talking about quarterbacks. But you got DJ Langway down in Florida. You got Arch Manning over at Texas. You got Lenore Sellers at South Carolina. You got Nico over at Tennessee. And, bro, that's just the top of the thing. You got Nussmeier down at LSU. You got the Simmons kid, who's actually, I think, better than Jackson Dart. There was a 5-star quarterback there coming in Ole Miss. Bro, there's dogs everywhere. Georgia's, I don't think that Stedman kid's going to start. I think it's that 5-star quarterback that they've been sitting on for like 2 years. So listen, it's some NFL talent down there at quarterback, man. And I'm like, whoa. B. Dirt said the top 2 quarterbacks in the class in the Big Ten, though. Yeah, but they're babies. I'm talking about what's already proven in that freaking SEC. Man, listen, in my opinion, bro, there's 5 quarterbacks in the SEC that can win the Heisman Trophy. In my opinion. I legitimately say 5, Andy. And so I'm like, man, I ain't never seen this before. Where I'm talking about these guys will be 5 for Heisman Trophy contenders, possibly 6 or 7 first-round draft picks over the next 2 years playing quarterback in the SEC. And, oh, God, could you imagine if King develops over there at Texas A&M? Can you imagine if that kid from Oklahoma gets hot, and because he was a true freshman too? Could you imagine if he gets hot, bro? It's a lot going on in that SEC, bro. It's a lot going on, Andy.
Yeah, and you're in a position too where like Diego Pavia, we know that he can beat some of the best in the SEC. We know that he's going to bring you that chaos factor. If you look down at Arkansas, Taylon Green was the reason that Arkansas dragged themselves to a 7-6 record last season, and he gets another year under Bobby Petrino who can cook up an offense. So it's like if you go down the list by the probably the 10th best quarterback in the conference, you're looking at Austin Simmons, who's the Ole Miss guy. And again, that's another coaching staff that knows how to cook up an offense. And then we haven't even talked about Jackson Arnold, who clearly was the most talented quarterback on Auburn. Yeah. He's a baby. But like when you're talking about the fact that a 5-star guy who's coming into his second year, who started as a freshman, doesn't even crack the top 10 of your conference's quarterback depth, it just goes to show that like this conference prioritized the quarterback position across the board for all of their rosters.
Man, yeah, Andy, I agree. And B-Dirt, I hear you, man. I see what they're saying at the Big Ten. Yeah, there's some money up here in the North. Yeah, we got winning. We won back-to-back national champions. But I'm telling you, the SEC's coming back with a vengeance, bro. And it's because they've stockpiled talent at the quarterback position. We all know that kids want to go play with the quarterback. When they see the quarterback blowing up all over the place and you're all on TV and all a national title, this and that, especially when it comes to skill position guys. But, Andy, now what we're seeing is some of these trenches dudes who was geared towards going towards other schools. It's like, nah, I'm going to go play with him. I saw that. Listen, everybody thinks that Tennessee done going to fall off the map. You done lost your damn mind because Tennessee done built them trenches with big-time 5-star depth. You thought Florida, Andy, we was calling Florida to be cooked last year. Look what happened. DJ Langway inserted himself, and the rest is history, bro. And Lenore Sellers in South Carolina has some sleeping giants. Like, you don't want to play them this next year because they learned how to win last year. Yeah, they got a lot of talent, jumped in the NFL. But when I'm telling you they've loaded up, and guess what else, since we're talking about quarterback, they've already got their quarterback of the future because they went and poached Aaron Nolan from the Buckeyes to sit behind Lenore Sellers. So listen, man, the quarterback deal in the SEC is unbelievable. And I can't wait till when we get closer and we start doing breakdowns and talking about what the real deal is for the quarterback position. Man, I'm just super hyped, man. Andy, we're coming to the close of the show, bro. I got to let you get your final thoughts in and out as we do this first initial Level Up College Football podcast on the Know It Alls channel, bro.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of things happening. I'm hopeful that now that the ACC stuff has been settled, we won't spend as much time as we did last year talking about potential conference realignment. Things are probably going to be settled now for a while, and we can get back to focusing some of the on-the-field stuff. But again, I think one of the most interesting things that we didn't get to it in this show, we're going to talk about it coming up this season, is when revenue sharing kicks in. We know that schools like Ohio State are committed to spending every single thing that they can do on their players. Don't know if, say, Kentucky is. Don't know if, say, Syracuse is. I think that this season is going to be really important for us to figure out which schools are committed to building a competitive football program and which schools are just trying to make sure that the balance sheet stays in the green as opposed to actually going after the dubs on the field. Yeah.
Andy, look at that invite from Running in the Jungle. He said Andy P needs to come on Running Through the Jungle and do some draft. Hey, listen, I'm telling y'all, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to college football. But I bow down to this dude right here, bro. This dude keeps me on my game and keeps me grinding and out there because Andy knows college football, bro. And he watches film. He does all the stuff that I do and love concerning college football. We know the players, right? So, yeah, Andy, I don't know if you're going to take the invite, but it's out there, bro. It's out there.
I appreciate the invite. We'll definitely be chatting, but I will say this, and I think this is one of the reasons why I love college football. I was explaining this to somebody recently. The NFL, everybody's playing the same game, and you're all looking for that Patrick Mahomes who just allows you to play the game at the highest level.
Yes, sir.
The reason college football is so great is that we have 130 teams that are playing the game, and there's about 50 different ways that game is being played at the college level. So when you get, like, I loved Ohio State versus Notre Dame. Those are two teams playing the game the same way in the national title game. It is way more fun when you get a Army going up against an Ohio State or something like that, because there's no way in the NFL a team would play triple option for an entire season, be committed to that. But in college, that's going to throw you for a rope. And we were this close to getting Army in the playoff this year, man. We were this close to watching Army wreak havoc on teams that had never played an option before and have to do it in a win-or-go-home game. And I was getting real hyped for that. But then again, Notre Dame, shout out to the Tim Lyons Notre Dame team. Fun fact that I looked up, their coach, Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman, I think that they have outscored the service academies by an average of 30 points per game since he's been there. That man knows how to stop a triple option like the best of them. So anyways, yes, that's there's my long-winded way of saying college football is way more fun than the NFL, and I will stand on that.
Man, I'm with you. I'm with you 150 on that, bro. I love the NFL. I love the draft analysis. I love this time free agent frenzy. I love the games. But, bro, college football is numero uno in my book, bro, because of some of the things you mentioned and also the parity that goes with it, bro. Anybody can beat anybody anytime. We saw it last year. Northern Illinois cracked Notre Dame over the freaking dome, and Notre Dame was in the national championship game. So, yeah, absolutely. I'm loving it, bro. So, listen, final thoughts, my final thinking. I'm thinking that we're going to talk a little bit moving forward about conference depth and who's really what. Because, y'all, in the spring portal, dudes ain't hitting it like that. You might get one or two dudes that move here or there, but you're going to have your team. And I'm thinking by the end of the spring, we're going to know what we know. Because we've already got the schedules. We know who the players are. But even more so, we're going to see who's going to be able to adjust on the fly to put teams in position to get some dubs. And this year in college football is going to be bananas. You thought last year was nuts? This next year is going to be super nuts. So listen, make sure that you like and subscribe. Like and subscribe to the Know-It-Alls channel, where you can catch shows like the Level Up College Football Podcast, where you can catch Smash the Gas, where you can check shows like the Know-It-Alls, where you can look at That's Rather Cavaliers. And we're putting a lot more content out there. So if you haven't subscribed, there's the QR code. Just take a little picture of it. Let your people see it. At the base, you see Maud, Tate, and Big G. But I'm telling you, the Know-It-Alls family is way bigger, including Sarah C. and Andy P. and the guys we rock with on Running Through the Jungle, the guys we rock with on That's Rather Cavaliers, the guys we rock with over there on Pay Dirt, and all the different shows that's out there. We're all big part of one big network trying to do something, move forward, and create the greatest channel you've ever seen out there. There's some of the people that we rock with, and we're definitely going to have a poster here moving forward that's got people like Tim Lyons and Sarah and Andy and all these other people that rock with the Know-It-Alls Nation, because we're all big part of one big family. So wherever you're listening to it, wherever you get your podcast, make sure you go back and check the Know-It-Alls podcast and the Level Up College Football Podcast. As for me, Big G, my boy Andy P, and my girl Sarah C, who's not in the building tonight, we're going to check y'all next time on the Level Up College Football Podcast.